When Bitmap Bureau and publisher Numskull Games announced Final Vendetta earlier this year, it quickly became one of my most anticipated games of 2022. After all, I enjoyed the UK-based studio's previous offerings, Xenocrisis and Battle Axe, which captured the spirit of the 16-bit era with their pixel-perfect presentation and challenging gameplay. So when I saw they were tackling my favorite genre, you better believe I was excited to clean up the streets in Final Vendetta. The game's premise is certainly a familiar one. The evil Syndicate, not to be confused with Streets of Rage's Syndicate, has kidnapped Claire Sparks' sister and taken control of London. Joined by retired pro wrestler Miller T. Williams and Street Fighter Duke Sancho, the trio set out to rid the Big Smoke of its criminal element and rescue her sister. Their mission will see them slugging their way through gritty ghettos, subway trains, fancy nightclubs, and other staples of the beat-em-up genre. Sure, the story and its settings are a near carbon copy of Final Fights, but that's pretty much the point, and it's a perfect excuse to get out there and crack some skulls. As you'd expect, the three playable protagonists play a bit differently, each filling a familiar archetype. The mulleted muscle man Miller is slow as molasses, but he hits like a Mack truck. Claire could very well be Streets of Rage's heroine Blaze Fielding's doppelganger, with her speedy punches and stylish judo tosses. She may not deal much damage, but she's perfect for getting in a few quick hits and a hip toss before getting back to safety. Lastly, Duke is the most balanced of the three, making him the safest bet for beginners. The abilities the game puts at your fingertips aren't the most robust, but they get the job done. You have your standard punches and kicks mapped to the square button. Meanwhile, pressing the square and X buttons simultaneously unleashes a special attack which is perfect for giving you breathing room when you find yourself surrounded. As you probably guessed, you have to use it sparingly, as performing a special move when your super meter's empty will cost you a bit of your health. Pressing the circle button guards. However, I found this to be pretty useless, as the animation's relatively slow, and many attacks seem to whiff through your defenses anyway. You can also attack downed enemies with the triangle button, but with how often you've got groups of foes bearing down on you, I seldom found this particularly effective. Recent beat-em-ups like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, Fight and Rage, and Streets of Rage 4 feel like natural evolutions of the genre, with their fresh mechanics they bring to the table. Final Vendetta, in comparison, is decidedly dated when it comes to delivering its beatdowns, with its limited moveset and more methodical pacing. The moment-to-moment gameplay feels much more similar to Capcom's Final Fight and Konami's Vendetta. It should be no surprise, as those are the two classic brawlers from which Final Vendetta borrows its name. As a big fan of those games, the old-school approach is something I can appreciate. And if you cut your teeth on the arcades in the late 80s and early 90s, I'm sure you will too. However, if you're looking for a more modern approach to the genre, you'll probably be somewhat disappointed with Final Vendetta's more rigid mechanics. When it comes to its presentation, Final Vendetta is sure to be a treat for anyone who spent their childhoods in the CRT-lit arcades of the 80s and 90s. It features detailed sprite work and exceptionally animated characters that move quite naturally. The backgrounds also look great, with plenty of eye-catching graffiti and other touches that bring each urban arena to life. I especially like the nightclub, with its swanky magenta lighting and cool neon signage that popped off the screen. Though I must admit the character designs themselves are a bit of a mixed bag at times, with some lacking detail compared to others. However, given the studio's size, a bit of inconsistency in this department is easy to look past. As good as the visuals are, Final Vendetta's soundtrack is just as impressive. Produced by the English electronic music duo and basketball all-stars the Utah Saints, it pays homage to Yuzo Koshiro's and Motohiro Kawashima's legendary Streets of Rage compositions. So if you're a fan of dancey, Euro house, and breakbeat arrangements, you'll likely love what the game offers on the aural front. Add to that some immensely satisfying sound effects to accompany the pixelated fisticuffs, and you have a game that looks and sounds excellent, perfectly capturing the essence of the era it aims to emulate. Now, Final Vendetta probably seems like a must-buy brawler with so much going for it. Unfortunately, at least mechanically speaking, The game has some pretty glaring issues that are hard to ignore and manage to hurt the overall experience. For starters, Final Vendetta's hit detection can sometimes be a little wonky. It's not uncommon to have a group of enemies start pummeling you when they're clearly a few vertical planes away from your character. Considering the ease with which your opponents can stun lock you and chew through an entire health bar, this lack of precision becomes incredibly frustrating. The game also relies on throwing too many hazards at the player from off-screen, such as bouncing barrels, swinging hooks, and more, and some of these threats, such as these massive shipping containers, can obliterate your character with a single hit. See these female boxers? They have a nasty tendency to strike you, even if they're facing the opposite direction. And don't even get me started on this guy. Miller simply can't react fast enough to avoid eating chokeslam after chokeslam upon wake up when battling this Macho Man wannabe. I'm trying to get out of the way, but as quickly as I can stand up, his throws connect, making me feel like I'm not even in control of my character anymore. Much like Bitmap Bureau's previous released Battle Axe, there are no continues or stage select screens in Final Vendetta. Instead, once you're dead, you're sent back to the title screen to lick your wounds in old school fashion. There are 2 difficulty modes to choose from, easy and hard. The only real difference between the two seems to be that easy mode offers you 7 lives as opposed to hard mode's 5, and the bosses seem to take damage a little bit easier. But aside from that, you'll have to contend with plenty of cheap deaths throughout the game. I feel the best beat-em-ups offer a satisfying challenge, where even when you lose, you feel like you're honing your skills and learning what to do next time around. Unfortunately, that's not often the case in Final Vendetta, and more often than not, I felt my successes were due to lucking out and avoiding gimmicky hazards, or avoiding getting stuck in an endless cycle of abuse due to shoddy hit detection rather than hard-fought victories. In addition to these balancing issues, I also experienced some occasional problems with the game's controls. These ranged from a noticeable input lag when using weapons, which made me avoid them almost entirely, to my character performing dashes or sidesteps despite my thumb never leaving the D-pad. And yes, this issue persisted when using both of my DualSense controllers. I'm not sure if this is a problem restricted to the PlayStation 5 version of Final Vendetta, or if it occurs on other platforms as well. In any case, I certainly hope it's addressed soon. Now, I know this sounds like a lot. However, the team at Bitmap Bureau is already working on sorting out many of these issues. During a recent conversation I had with Mike Tucker, the game's lead designer, he was actually pinpointing the problems I mentioned in my written review for Hey Poor Player and making changes to the code on the fly. Now, if that's not dedication, I don't know what is. So while Final Vendetta may be a little rough around the edges in its current state, I'm confident the developer will do what it takes to get the game where it needs to be. And if incremental changes over time are enough to make this already good brawler great, then I'm all for it. With its excellent production values and weighty melees, Final Vendetta is a fun throwback to the glory days of arcade gaming if you can look past its occasionally frustrating challenge and some quality of life issues. Still, I can't help but think that with a bit more spit and polish, it could have been something exceptional for fans of the beat-em-up genre. If you have the patience to see your way through to the end, you'll be able to unlock a few extra game modes such as Survival, Boss Rush, and an even more challenging Ultra Difficulty mode. Though I have trouble imagining many players will have what it takes to make it that far, at least in the game's current state. If you're looking for an unabashedly old-school brawler that doesn't pull any punches, Final Vendetta certainly delivers that much. But only the most patient of pugilists will be able to get the most out of this package. Well, that's all for my review of Final Vendetta. Are you playing the game right now? If so, what do you think of it? As always, I love to hear what you think, so be sure to sound off in the comments below and let me know. Thank you for watching. This is Super Neo Mega, signing out.
Perdedor inútil!